Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of Inspired Action, where we dive into the most pressing leadership challenges and hope to inspire you to take a more coach-centered and people-focused approach to leadership. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and it's time to get started with our three amazing guests for today. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Inspired Action. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and I'm here with three incredible guests today to answer this question. What role does storytelling or sharing personal experiences play in developing deeper bonds? But first, I want to take a minute to introduce these three ladies to you. We'll start with Wendy Roop. Wendy's the founder of Wendy Roop Coaching, a leadership coach, mental health advocate, and the co-host of Culture is an Inside Job, a podcast for executives, business owners, and culture shapers who want to bridge the gap between the culture they envision and the leader they choose to be. Secondly, Jill White, author and John Maxwell certified coach, helping women build purpose-driven lives and tailored to their unique gifts and calling quickly and without overwhelm. She's a seasoned coach, consultant, and mentor for nonprofit leaders, as well as a professional development specialist for educators and administrators. And last but not least, Kristen Lovenstein, owner and founder of Kristen Lovenstein Coaching, your guide to career clarity and confidence. She's a PCC certified workplace career and professional development coach, passionate about partnering with clients to elevate their careers and personal lives toward mindful health and happiness. I am thrilled that you ladies could join me, and I cannot wait to hear what each of your responses are. So let's get started. Kristen, the question again: what role does storytelling or sharing personal experiences play in developing deeper bonds?
So I love this question, Kyle, because this was very timely. Storytelling is a huge part of the work that I do. And just last week, I was working with an executive who was brand new to an organization. And the question from him came up: how do I get close to my new group as quickly as possible? He
Mm.
was a C suite executive, and the CEO had tasked him with making some significant changes within 60 days. So we had a whole discussion around how do we use storytelling in executive coaching? How do we allow executives to share a piece of themselves? And the answer to this question was absolutely, personal self-disclosure. He
Mm.
had a super powerful personal story that he had brought up multiple times in our coaching. And it was something that really mattered to him. And he had talked about how this personal story had literally laid the groundwork for his leadership style.
Mm.
So we decided to use this story in his first group presentation in the hopes that the self disclosure would be a way to humanize him and help him build trust quickly. He told the story, and when he did, he started weaving in his leadership philosophies as well. So we're hoping this allows him to get to know the staff quickly and clarify, what is going on in their performance in relation to the CEO's objectives. But
Wow.
so,
I love that. I love that
Mhm.
story, right?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, I
It,
love
we,
it,
it
and I
was,
can't wait to hear how it turns out. We don't know yet. I want to
yeah.
know.
Yeah. Well, they say the shortest distance between two people is a good story, right? So it's a great place to start no matter what.
Absolutely,
Fantastic.
absolutely.
Wendy, what are your thoughts? What would you add to that as it relates to the role storytelling or sharing personal experience plays in developing a deeper connection or a deeper bond with people?
Gosh, I mean, I can just echo what Kristen is saying as far as what I've experienced. I mean, um, when we are able to put ourselves out there first as leaders, right,
Mm.
people will tend to follow. And it's like it's that ultimate building of trust because if we're willing to share our heart, then others are then willing to do the same thing, and it's the ripple effect, right? Like we just see that ripple effect when we put ourselves out there like that.
Yeah, and I think there's that certainly that fair amount of vulnerability. People, right? They connect with our scars, not necessarily our trophies, and I think that that alone. So much of this, you guys know that my wife is a storytelling coach. I mean, that's her side of the business, and you just think about that story arc of the victim to victory is somewhat what some people call it, but those things happen for us at all different times of our life. And so the willingness to share that helps us connect.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Wendy. Jill, what would you add to what Kristen and Wendy have offered so far?
Well, I started my career as a teacher in elementary. And so storytelling has been just a part of my career. But I love really studying what it is. And I've heard April talk about it. But storytelling is actually one of the most powerful tools we have for building trust and connection, just like the story of the man that wanted to connect with this new team. When we share a story, we're actually offering them a piece of ourselves, and it becomes a bridge between our experience and their heart. And really, throughout history, storytelling has shaped the way that we live and connect. Before there were even books or words, people were telling stories. And stories have always been how we've made sense of life. People can forget the facts that we share as teachers and coaches and leaders, or even my great advice that I give. They may forget that, but they remember how they felt when they heard a story of something real, something that made them say, that's just like me. I think that a well-told story brings humanity into the conversation, and it says to the listener, you're not alone in this. And that's what creates deeper bonds. It's when we have a shared understanding, not our perfection. Just like Kyle just said, this sense of it's not our trophies that connect us, it's our scars. And I've seen this time and time again, whether I'm in coaching or in leadership or in just simple conversations. When we stop trying to impress and instead just start telling the truth, even the messiest truth, and usually definitely because of the messiest truth, that's the moment when people lean in. Whether it's a story of our failure, our uncertainty, or starting over, it gives the listener permission to be honest too and to trust us. I had a time in my life when I, along with several others, got pushed out of a job by a shiny newcomer. And when I share how I navigated through that pain and loss into renewed purpose and redirection, and how I learned to be grateful for that bend in the road, others see how their own pain and loss in that story can be met with hope that lies ahead. And so, the one thing I would encourage people to remember is that we all have stories, and there's usually one that feels very ordinary to us. And almost always, that's exactly the story that someone else needs to hear. So I just want to encourage people, keep sharing stories. People listen. As a former teacher, I'll tell you that story time actually decreased absenteeism. They want to come back and find out more. So storytelling is a very good connecting point.
Yeah. And I think you bring a great point, right? Sometimes that story is somebody else's survival guide. And we think about that.
Yes.
And a lot of times people will say, well, I don't really have a story. There's nothing special about me. I mean, I didn't, go through some illness or, almost die in a car accident or either those kind of things. And the truth is, and I think you said that, Jill, everyone has a story. And I think when we're willing to share that, when we're willing to tell those stories, it gives other people permission to be human.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do people need to do to create space for other people to tell their story? Right. A lot of times you'll have people in a room that are comfortable doing it and they'll jump in and then it's kind of, well, Jill, what would you say? What would you share? And Jill's like, oh, I don't know. And then it kind of get crickets and it sits. So how as leaders can leaders create space? Kristen, your example of the guy sharing his story, how now can he do that, whether it's in a captured environment in a conference room or a training room, now do that in a hallway or on a Zoom call and create that space? What are your thoughts? Let's just kind of go and maybe in reverse order. Jill, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I know we need to listen, and we need to listen at the oddest moments because little snippets come out that will make us question a little bit deeper what that story really is. And then I think that is the front door to asking for the story and encouraging that and celebrating the story somehow, that when they share their story with us, they have been very vulnerable. And we need to have eye contact and listen to what they're saying and not not be interrupting them with I was sharing a story today with someone, and they immediately looked at someone else and asked them another question. And I didn't take it personal, but I thought if I were new to storytelling, I would have taken that personal. And so we need to really give them a lot of respect for being vulnerable enough to share a story.
Yeah, that's a great point. Wendy, what would you piggyback on that?
Yeah, well, Jill, I love that you talk about listening because I don't think most of us don't do that, well enough. Because it's like, we already have the next thing in mind and we think that we're supposed to be, we think we're helping. And so we just insert before we really truly listen. But I think it goes back to what we were saying before. It's like, going first. So I think I hold these retreats called Space and Grace. And it's just so funny. I bring that up because of, what you're saying as far as space. And I think it's doing just that. Like it's holding, that's why I love what I do as a coach and as a, facilitator and so forth, because I get to hold the space for people to be able to stop and think and feel long enough to know what's coming up for them. Because that's part of the issue, right? We just go through this thing called life so fast and we have our own operating system that most of us don't pause and we're not curious with ourselves or with each other. So I think when we can stop and pause and then just be curious and ask more questions and to our point earlier, be willing to share. The things I have my own story in my life and being vulnerable enough to share. My kids and I lost their dad to suicide several years ago. And I just found out that, by being willing to put myself out there, I have no idea the people that I'm willing, that I'm able to help because of that. So that vulnerability and holding space.
Yeah, I love that. And as you mentioned in the coaching space, the acknowledging and validating that to, to affirm that they're heard, right?
That's
Not that
right.
it's good,
Yes.
bad, right, wrong, ugly. There's a fair number out there, as you said, that are formulating their next response or, oh, how can I offer a story that trumps this one, or, that shows that I've done this too. And as we know, in those instances, a lot of times that's ego and insecurity, but creating the space for that authentic connection to form just by, as you said, you've got a shared pain with other people, and maybe they're just now starting that journey, Wendy, and as hard as that was for you guys, you're coming out on the other side. And so how can we do that for more people? I love it.
Yeah.
Kristen,
I was
no,
just
go
going
ahead, Wendy, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that going back to that, right? People just want to feel seen and heard. And
Yeah.
and when we can hold that, we don't have to understand it, but when we can just hold that space for them, they just become more willing to share. Yeah.
Yes.
So true. Kristen, what would you add?
Well, similar to what Jill and Wendy just said, I think definitely we listen for the in. We listen for the moment because we have to listen for the moment, because if we're not listening for it, we're going to lose it. And then, as we always say in coaching, and it's something that I say all the time, especially when I'm working with leaders who have just started a new position, which is a lot of what I do in career coaching, it's we lead with curiosity. So we just keep asking more questions. And, when we are hearing some information that we think would be super valuable to the health of the organization or the team or even us connecting, then we say things like, tell me more. We don't shut it down like with our own story. We don't shut it down with, well, let me tell you how it should be or what it looks like, which is, sometimes a feeling from leaders. They feel like they need to have that level of expertise. And what I coach around a lot is, let's try to put that aside and let's connect. And we connect by, tell me more. I want to understand what's going on for you in this organization. What are your thoughts? What do you see happening? And so we have to continue to lead with curiosity and be super open to the moment, because those moments are precious.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. So good. I was sharing with you guys how, how we've started doing these infographics that will come out after the show. And so you guys will be out tomorrow, but I'm kind of thinking about one of the reasons behind that is people really won't remember those bullet points. Maybe there's 7 things or 10 things, but I can assure you they're going to remember the twists and turns of this conversation. As Wendy just shared her pain around losing her husband and the father of her kids. Kristen's story about the executive that said, hey, I'm going to go out on a limb here and share a story. Jill, your story as an educator. And as you were telling that, I could just imagine these kids in elementary sitting around with their eyes wide open, hungry for more. Tell me, I can't miss school today. Miss White's going to tell us what happened to the rabbit, those kind of things. And so it's those plot twists that really engage people in that connection, as opposed just to the bullets of what we think we need to learn, know, or apply. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Good stuff.
One thing I think it's good for us to remember is when we feel pretty good about storytelling, like I like to tell stories. I live in that. But we have to be careful to close our mouths sometimes. And like Wendy and Kristen were both saying, seek out things, ask, don't always share our story. Today at lunch, somebody would be sharing something and a story would pop in my mind, and I'd have to think, that's not necessary right now. I had to always really practice self-control on storytelling so that others are sharing their stories more.
Yeah. I love it. And that's great insight too, right? The intentionality behind it, but holding the space and knowing when to share and maybe when not to.
Right.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right, ladies, that's a wrap. Thank you guys again for showing up today and bringing all of that incredible insight. Thank you guys for watching. We are live on LinkedIn every Thursday at noon Central. So be sure to tune in there or join us on our YouTube channel at MindFit Coaching. Have a great one. Well, that's a wrap for another edition of Inspired Action, the Leadership Forecast. We're so grateful for our guests today and the impact they're making with the work they do. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel to watch the longer version of this episode, and be sure to like, comment, connect with, and follow me and each of our guests. You'll find all of our links in the caption of this video. Thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in every Thursday at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern for new episodes.